everyone. My name is Jeannie Vittoni, and you are entering into conversations on sex, addiction, and relationships. And I'm here with my friends and colleagues. I've got Dan Drake in the room, Wendy Conquest, and Tim Stein. Today, we've got a special guest for you. Her name is Rebecca Cruz, and you possibly are familiar that she is the wife of Terry Crews. And both of them are really out in public about addiction and recovery and betrayal trauma. And so we're so happy that she's here with us. How are you guys doing? I'm thinking I'm really excited to have her, but how are you guys?
Well, it's not often that you hear someone who has experienced betrayal trauma and gets through it and gets into recovery and actually gets to a point where they're growing and expanding as individuals and as a couple. So I think that Rebecca and Terry have really accomplished something that not a lot of couples get to. So I'm really excited to have her on today and to hear how they've done that, what their journey has been and hopefully give hope to couples.
Mm.
And I don't know about you guys, but I hear all the time from partners, especially, but I think from couples, they want stories of hope. They want stories of couples that have been down the road for a while. So I'm just really excited that she's willing to come here, share her side of the story. We had Terry on before, so I'm really curious to hear her side of the story, and also just I really appreciate her vulnerability and how just her being willing to share with us and what a gift it is to us and what a gift it is to our listeners too. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm with you. We hear a lot of stories about relationships that don't make it, and I'm glad that we have a story about a relationship that did. And also, I'm realizing that while we have had a lot of people on here that we've talked betrayal trauma with, most of the time it's professionals. And so the opportunity to have a conversation with somebody who is in their own betrayal trauma healing, and not just like in the beginning stages, but like has been in this for a while, and to hear that in the trenches experience, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I forget is how many years it's been. So that'll be interesting. So, hey, Rebecca, are you out there? Come on down and join us here in this conversation. There she is.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Rebecca,
Welcome.
welcome.
Welcome. Hey, how long has it been since first discovery? I don't, here we are in 2025. How long has it been?
It has been 15 years. February 10, 2010 was what we call D-Day at our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So 15 years later, we
yeah.
talk about the different phases of healing for betrayed partners. And the first stage is very chaotic, stabilization, safety, disclosure. And then, phase two is mourning, grieving, loss, anger. And then third, what we call post-traumatic growth, reconnection is the new you, the new version of us and such. But
Mm.
would it be okay if we kind of start at the beginning, like back to D-Day and
Yeah, absolutely.
okay. All right, can you tell us a little bit about what happened? And I know that some of this story is very public already, but
Mhm. Well, it was February of 2010, and my husband and I were living in a Los Angeles suburb with our 5 kids. We had, gosh, I think our youngest was 6 years old. Little Isaiah was 6. And he was on location shooting a project on the East Coast. And we had a habit of calling each other every night when he'd get back to the hotel, and particularly Friday nights because it was the end of the week and we would talk late into the night. And it was a Friday night and I hadn't heard from him. And I called him and there's going straight to voicemail. So I was like, oh, he'll call me. So, an hour goes by, a couple hours goes by, I don't hear from him. And I started to get this sick feeling in my stomach. you know, we
yeah.
all talk about gut feelings,
Mhm.
but it wouldn't leave me. It just really would not leave me. And I just was like, something is not right. So I called. And when we talked, we argued because he was out with co-stars from his show, but in this particular instance, everybody else had kind of backed out. So he was out with someone who he worked with, a female. And I'm thinking to myself, well, why are you out alone with
Mm.
that person? Like, even if it's like innocent, a Friday night, like 9, 10 o'clock at night, you go somewhere publicly with someone and you're famous and she's, it just is going to start a rumor at the least, But for some reason, this act enraged me. It just enraged me. I felt like a volcano was erupting inside me. And I started screaming at him on the phone and bringing up other things that bothered me, or it's like all these things were coming up.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was, I don't know how to put it. It wasn't like prior to that, I was thinking about any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jokingly say God organized this eruption for
Yeah.
the two of us.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and that's how I view it, because it was very sudden for me. It just like, why am I couldn't shake this anger, And so in the course of that argument, I started pounding him with questions. And in those questions, like, well, what have you ever done this? Or I just kept getting this feeling like,
Yeah.
you're a liar, you're a liar, and there's something about you I don't know. And
Your
finally,
intuition was going off. Your
yeah,
intuition bells were going
well,
off.
and as a minister, I have a prophetic gift. So
Mm.
I'm a mystic. I've seen all my children before they were born. I knew Terry was going to be my husband almost within 3 months of meeting him.
Mm.
So I see things, and I started like saying things to him that scared him, like I knew something, So these particular questions were very pointed, like, who are you talking to or texting or Facebooking, or who are you? And he would say, oh, nobody. Oh, and so we kept fighting that whole evening, and then I'd hang up, he'd hang up. And then the next day, I think it was Saturday morning, I think, or maybe Sunday. It's a little blurry now, but um, that's when I screamed at him and I said, what don't I know about you, Terry Crews? And the phone went silent. And then he just confessed. He confessed that he had been unfaithful. He went to a massage parlor. And he said it was years before, but that he never said anything. And he confessed the addiction to porn, that he'd gone to porn, occasionally strip clubs, things like that. Not things he had done since he got famous. He was very afraid to go anywhere publicly after he was well known. But it just all came out. He just, confessed whatever he felt like he could relate to. And I said, well, what else? I said, sin is like cockroaches. When you see one, there are 100 under the floor, And he, admitted to various things like having constant problems with lustful thoughts, or attractions to other people. But he promised he wasn't like serially cheating. He didn't have any kids. He didn't have that. Really, the porn was the bigger, issue. And suddenly, clear as a bell, I felt like I heard the Lord say, throw him out. And I said, we're done. And he screamed. He went, Becky, you said we could always work. I said, no, I told you, Terry, if you ever cheat on me, I'm leaving you. And I'm leaving. And he said, he kind of started to cry.
Of course. Yeah.
And I said, yeah, get ready to see your kids on the weekend and don't miss a single payment on my house. And I hung up the phone. And I sat there, and I remember I was in this bathrobe, my favorite bathrobe. And I just thought, what am I going to do? And the kids were watching TV, and, I had teenagers, so they're watching the younger ones. And I jokingly say, I was like a dead man in that white robe, walking around my house like a zombie, like, oh, I'm getting divorced. I got to call a lawyer. Oh, I got to tell my mother, I got to tell the kids.
Yeah.
And then I'm picturing, the tabloids, like, for one day will be the news. Oh, Terry Crews breaking up. And then I said, what am I going to do? And I don't know. I was mourning, but I guess you could say I was in the shock phase.
Mhm.
You know, I
Sure.
wasn't, aware of some phases. I just was walking around kind of in some fear. There was fear but then people of faith always say this, there was like a calm
Okay.
at the center.
Okay.
There was. Um, and he called our pastor. And our pastor told him, well, Terry, I can't promise you'll get your wife and family back, but you need to get better for you. And that was a very big moment for him because he'd always been the person to do things for reward. Because he grew up in a very kind of religious, fundamentalist, just a lot of rules.
Okay.
And so that's how he connected to God, to people. I do the right thing, you give me what I want,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess he didn't have that honor, that sense that I want to do the right thing because it's the right thing. Because he had seen duplicitous people his whole life, in his home, in the church. Everybody said they believed one way, but they secretly lived another way. So that kind of duality was very normal to him.
Yeah.
And I guess he thought I was like that. And we all have, inconsistency. But I was pretty much like what you see is what you get with me, So I think it was about a week we didn't speak.
Okay. So a week goes by and you guys don't talk, really.
Yeah.
All right.
It felt like a week, I'll be honest.
Like you said, walking
Yeah.
dead in the robe in the house. That
Yeah.
makes, a lot of betrayed partners have so much shock,
Yeah.
disbelief.
And so I was walking through the front room, and I walked over the sketch pad that he had taken to an art class. He had sketched nudes and different things. And there's a man in the book, kind of sprawled out on the floor with one knee out, and like someone hit him and he hit the floor.
Mhm.
And I felt like God said to me, that's your husband right now. He's very humbled right now and very just
Mm-hmm.
broken.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, call him. I said, call him. So I picked up the phone and I called him. And he's like, you called me. And he said, I'm so sorry. He's making all the excuses and explanations and apologies. And I said, well, I feel like God told me to call you. And he said, honey, I promise I want to fix this. And, he started saying all that. And I said, well, I guess we could try. I mean, what did Pastor Jim say? And by this time he'd spoken with our marriage counselor who had advised him to seek treatment for the addiction and told him that he felt it was addiction.
Okay.
To which I replied, addiction? That's not an addiction, He's just a dog, And he said, no, honey, they're saying, and I'm going, oh boy, they done made an excuse for everything, And so I went to the phone and I called my pastor's wife, Marguerite, for support, just like, could we talk, And she says, well, I know Jim said he sounds really sorry, Rebecca, and maybe you guys can, she was, in the church, there's always an emphasis or a pressure toward fixing it. Because the heart of our gospel is forgiveness. So we typically don't advocate couples just, unless one partner is so egregious and so unwilling. If there's any willingness on both parts, you almost always see the church try to get people to forgive each other and heal. Because it's so central to our message.
Okay.
Can I
And
just comment on that for 2 seconds, Rebecca, or just ask you about
sure.
that? Because
No,
I'm Christian too, so I grew
yeah,
up in person of faith. I still am, and
yeah,
I think that's a beautiful part of Christianity. I've also seen it be pushed on people kind of too soon. It sounds like this
yep.
came from you, from your own relationship with God, and then seeking it
Yeah.
outside. So it, instead of someone saying, "Hey, you should forgive him. He's contrite," it felt like this actually was aligned with where you were in that moment. But I've just seen it, especially from the person who's done
Pressure.
the betraying. Yeah, pressured. And again, I want to say that I've seen that a lot of times for betrayed partners out there. Sounds like a little different than your
Um,
experience, though.
I would absolutely say there is a lot of pressure, especially if you're the female and
Yeah, right.
you're the victim. The guys, I'm not saying they aren't encouraged to forgive, but I've seen many more female addicts or female, that have affairs. They get kicked to the curb. They don't always get the grace that is expected to be given to the men. So there's an element of sexism
Totally.
there
Yep.
that I have personally observed. But to that end, yes, my heart was already saying, like I said, that something told me to call him,
Mm-hmm.
and so I did, out of obedience to that sense of call him, And so, as we began our journey, he went off to rehab.
So he
He went
went
off.
right away.
He
Went,
pretty quickly after that, he went to PCS for 10 days.
okay.
Um, and I will admit I was, well, this is all new to me, but
Were you skeptical?
how can I put it? I viewed it as an answer, but I think I had denial because I was like, addiction, this,
Yeah.
yeah, I almost was like, what do you mean addiction? You're an addict? Like, I almost wanted to minimize, how to classify it, I don't know why, but I just did.
I think
And
if I can jump in, I think that's a really common response from a lot
mhm,
of betrayed. It's like, what is this addiction thing?
mhm.
Is it addiction or is it not? Is that an excuse? Is it not? I think there's a lot of confusion in that stage.
And I think I had a little element of I'm, because they say that people who are attached to the addict are supposedly also addicted. And so I think I had this little sense of the shame of I'm the wife of an addict. Like that felt like a label, like even though it's not my fault, but
Right.
something about the egregiousness of the person acting this way, but the wife always seems to get blamed somehow.
Yeah, right.
And and
That's something we've talked about a lot in this podcast, particularly, is the change of the treatment perspective for the betrayed partners.
and I'll
Because,
be honest, when I was going,
yeah,
uh there was you were just a co-addict no matter what. I was like, well,
yeah,
how am I a co-addict? I didn't even know. I could see if
right.
I knew and I was enabling, but I was completely in the dark.
And that's
And
the perspective,
then
by the
they
way.
go, you knew. I'm like, no, I suspected, but I didn't know.
Right.
And that element of shifting the blame, I call it the betrayal of Eve. I'm writing a book on that too.
Oh,
Good for
good.
you.
That all the energy shoots toward the wife. I'm like, it goes back to Adam. So when I say something and the husband blames me, I'm like, blamer. You're being an Adam is a blamer. Blamer, stop blaming. It's like a
Yeah.
joke. But so I had a element of shame. I remember that sense, like, oh, are I couldn't even place it. I didn't even understand how that feeling came to be for me, but it was there.
Mhm.
And so when he went, um, I think, like I said, I had a sense of denial,
Mhm.
and then I had I had a relative who had gone to AA.
Mhm.
So I knew there was a 12-step situation. This place was utilizing 12-step. PCS was utilizing that. So he had written me a letter from rehab. Um, you know, they write letters,
What was it,
apologizing.
what was it like for you to get the letter?
Um, gosh, I wasn't sure if I believed it, but I will tell you the aspect of it that gave me a bit of optimism was the fact that I knew my husband to be very secretive and concerned about his image. Very much. We used to jokingly call Terry Mr. Image because he could turn on the star, turn on the personality. I mean, we'd be fighting in the car, and the minute we got to the premiere, he was all smiles, opening the door. And I'm like, you're such a phony. And I said it to him one time in front of all his fans. I said, you're a phony. I said, you're just yelling at me in the car and you're going to open the door like you're such a gentleman. And all those ladies went, oh, Terry, oh, you know. And so knowing that, even the kids said that about him, made me go, he's going to go to rehab and sit with total strangers and like, air all his, that, that did not fit the way I saw him. And it made me go, wow, like maybe he is going to change or he's, I don't know what I expected, but I think my heart, because I had issues with rejection and abandonment, and I had a father who passed when I was little, and then the stepfather was an abuser. I had no expectation that he'd try to save us or fight for us, or I just thought, oh, he's going to dump us, and we're just going to be another statistic. And so I was totally walking around expecting this to just, for him to, to hell with it, whatever, bye. I was expecting him to be that way, and he was the opposite.
Yeah.
So him getting into treatment, getting vulnerable, getting truthful in front of all these people, image or not, that's really made an impression on you.
It broke my heart.
Oh.
I remember going, wow, this guy is going to put his whole reputation, on the line because he is saying he doesn't want to lose his family. And that impressed me a lot.
Showing where his priorities were.
Yeah. And having had the prior experience, and he shares this in one of his books, where he got kind of emotionally involved with someone in the very beginning of our marriage. And as that thing unfolded and revealed itself, he had apologies and, oh, honey, I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. Blah, blah, blah. I'll make it up to you. We'll go to counseling. He was the same, very sorry. And, and wrote the girl a letter or, and said, hey, listen, this was dumb, that kind of thing. So, and I feel forgave him for that. I truly just said, you know what, we're young. We got married young. I get it. And it was a true, full forgiveness. Like I never thought about it again. You know what I'm saying? I really fought to not hold on to it. Mm-hmm. But now we're at 22 years married. Mm-hmm. And you've got a whole nother, I can't even tell you how done I was. Because he was impossible to live with too. He was angry all the time. He was short-tempered, impatient, grumpy. He yelled at me. He yelled at the children. So his grumpy was what we didn't like. I had no idea the other thing was going on. So from that place, he came home like this broken egg. Like I did not recognize. Like he was crying all the time. He'd just cry. I watched him cry for like 3 years.
And I can see this, that still makes such an impact on you. Seeing him in a vulnerable place. And you were vulnerable too at the time.
Well, yeah, I'm a mom of 5. I had been a housewife. I had only worked intermittently during those years, so I was very afraid But at the same time, I knew God had me. I said, God will bless me some way. But I didn't know like, how would this look? I remarry, he remarries. Oh, I never wanted that. It was like the death of my dream.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, death of your dream.
and he was hard to live with when he came home too, because he was so open and like his heart was just on a string. It was hard for us to interact without a therapist, because I would hurt him. I would say things that hurt him, and he would just have to hide from me because it would make him go into shame.
Mhm.
But I thought, well, you should feel ashamed, and I felt like, and you need to take your punishment. I felt that way. Like, yeah, you need to let me scream about it. And initially, that was not easy for him to do. Um, so I felt like I suffered a lot in the initial phases. And the therapy was all geared around helping the addict.
Oh, back then, right.
So there wasn't I don't think I ever heard the word betrayal trauma, or I never heard. All I heard was co-addict, codependent, you're codependent. I was like, what the hell? How is this? How do I have anything to do with this? And later I read the book Prodependence, by
Rob,
our guy's name? Is
Bob
it
Weiss.
Dr.
Bob Weiss.
Doc-
Rob Weiss.
Yes, love him.
Yeah.
Love this man. And I said, that makes sense. This theory he's talking about makes total sense to me.
Mhm.
So I read the, Melody Beatty. I read the
Mhm.
who's the lady?
Be a
Yeah,
melody, facing love.
Melody and Desiree. Is it Desiree? The couple in Minnesota. The guy's a pastor, was a pastor.
Mark Laser.
Mark and Debbie Laser. Read their stuff, and then I was online with the guy, the marriage Sherpa. I get his emails every day. And then there was a ministry called Rejoice Marriage Ministries. They similarly, the husband was alcoholic, abusing the wife, cheating. They broke up, and God spoke to the wife to start praying for him. And this couple had this amazing restoration. And they spent the next like 40 years teaching couples how to save their marriage. Really great people. And so I found all these little resources, and I like hung on to them for dear life, because there wasn't anything for me out there. There really wasn't.
So Rebecca, can I ask, so the partners always ask, well, will I trust again? When will I trust? How will I trust?
mm,
What was your journey with that?
I'll be honest, the trust was a long, hard fought battle, because there were things I did not like about both our industry and my husband's career that were already a problem for me. Um, I was an actress, singer, dancer before I met my husband. So I have respect for actors and what they do.
Mm.
And so there's a lot about acting that looks so, risque and this and that. But, kissing a person you don't know is like kissing a wall. It's like, it's not exciting necessarily. It's very awkward. But in that phase, I couldn't see him in a scene with another woman, any kind of scene. I don't care if he just smiled at her, it would trigger me. Red carpets, or if he did something where he took his shirt off, I would just get so angry, And that was stuff I wasn't crazy about, but after his disclosure, I couldn't, it would be so painful to see him act sexy in any way publicly, that I just was like, you have to leave the career, or I gotta like abandon this, because it was so hard. That was very hard. Him getting back to work, and like he got like he got in the Sexiest Man issue that year.
Oh.
And I remember just going, oh God, what a like stab in my chest to have to like see pictures of him like that,
Rebecca, what helped you get through it? What helped you?
I'm not even sure I can I can tell you.
Okay.
I did do some research on healing your own soul.
Yeah.
I also discovered that I could use empirical data. In other words, I did on occasion hire people to, follow him or check things and check the internet or however. Um, and I always like came up short. I never found anything. The tracker said he went where he said he went, the grocery store, the gas station, those, and I'd have these fantastical movies in my head that he had a whole nother family and he had a girlfriend down the street in the apartment. Um, and you could say you don't know what people are doing. And especially, I'll say this, knowing I'd been with the man that long and didn't know, it just made me like, oh man, I was naive. Like I should have been like following him or something. But the majority of what he was doing was on his computer at work. He was on his laptop in his trailer watching the porn. That was the majority. Yes, occasionally he went to like a movie theater, a little movie theater or something like that. But all that to say,
Yeah.
I did not, I don't think I had a template except to say that I prayed a lot and I would scream and yell and cuss at my husband, and then he'd apologize, and he just kept apologizing. He just would say, honey, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I would scream, and I remember I threw some stuff at my house and broke some important furniture, and he would just sit down on the floor and he would just sit there crying and go, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He just kept saying he was sorry. I
And
guess
those,
till I believed him.
but I think that's, I don't think there's a shortcut for it. I mean, a lot of times we
Yeah,
say words and actions lining up. He's
yeah,
says one thing and he's doing one thing, and it's consistency over time and
right. And
compassion and
then,
empathy and
yeah,
being contrite about it. Yeah.
and he was contrite. Sometimes it was hard for him to be empathetic. I remember that in the early days, because all it would do is if I would say, oh, and I'd scream, it would just hurt him so bad that he would just pull away. Uh, he's learned to be empathetic, honestly.
And I
But
also hear that you had a sense of what you needed. I mean, one of the things that we often talk about with rebuilding trust is
mhm,
how it comes in phases. And what I hear
mhm,
you recognizing is like when you found out about this and it was the early stages, it was very much
mhm,
I had no idea. And so now I don't know what to believe. And so you found yourself leaning into I need to verify that what he's telling me is true so that
right,
I can trust it because I can verify it. And then
right,
eventually, okay, I trust him because what I see him doing matches what he's telling me.
yeah,
And that eventually moves into, I trust him because I feel like he's trustworthy. But it takes a
yeah.
long time to get there. But I hear you sort of having this sort of instinctive sense of, well, this is kind of what I need to be able to trust anything right now. And I'm
And I would
honor
say
that.
some of that was encouragement from the counselors at PCS. I remember Dr. Earls telling me, you don't have, because we were having an argument in front of the counselor, and Terry said something like, for some reason she don't believe me. And the counselor said he had this little air horn. It was called a BS horn. And he blew the horn. He blew the horn. He says, for some reason she doesn't trust you, Terry. Backtrack. He's like,
Right.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Because
Amazing.
they're so in the habit of the gaslighting and all that he gaslighted me right in front of the therapist, and
Right.
the therapist goes, hey, dude. And Terry's like, oh yeah, right, you're right. Because he felt like, well, now I'm not. I'm like, well, I don't know that. So we did like covenant eyes.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had covenant eyes on his phone and I could check his phone. And yeah, there were times I would like, I would just get wired up and I'd go through the phone and I'd go through this and I'd go and I would never find, it was, and he took a lie detector. We did a lot. And I did that. And I was just like so scared, like, oh, he's going to fail. And then we're going to get divorced. And then, oh, and the guy, hands me the paper. And he came out on a train out to Greenwich because we were living in Greenwich, Connecticut. And I took him back to the train station. He says, Mrs. Cruz, I think your husband is telling you the truth. And he hands me the paper. He says, if a man wants to change his ways, he can. He says, I work with criminals and, this guy. And I hired him because he worked with the worst kind of people. He said, and then it turns out the guy's a man of faith. And he says, I know with God, you can do anything. And I looked at him like, who sent you to my house? And so, but it was very sweet. And I came home with the letter, and Terry's looking at me like, how did I do? Because I guess he was scared there'd be like a false positive. I don't know. He was scared. And I said, he said you passed. And he just like dropped down on one knee and grabbed my little knees. He's like, honey, I'm telling you. And I said, I know. And I hugged him. I said, thank you for going through that. He's like, oh, but I'm trying to prove it. I'm trying to prove. So
that's what I'm saying, is like he's trying to
yeah.
show you with that, like Dan was saying, that consistency.
Yeah. And I would say those years
yeah,
where Terry was consistent was with his humility and with the contriteness. He wasn't super empathetic. Sometimes that was hard for him, but the apologizing, he just kept he just, honey, I'm sorry. I know. And it just took, all that and then getting back to life. I had children, I had a ministry, I had a world I was trying to build, doing some entertainment things. And I found I just had to leave him in a box somewhere and go on with my life. I had to stop obsessing about whether he was cheating on me. Now, what would happen though, and this is where I'm actually going to do some EMDR in August. I'm going to see a lady.
oh, good.
I realized that when life would get stressful, and this was only like a year ago, that I would backslide into like a lot of suspicion and a lot of, and I'm like, well, I can't overlook that feeling because it proved to be true. And so literally something like 2 years ago, was it 2 years? Maybe 2 years ago. I think it was just after we moved in our new house. I hired a PI. I said, search the web, that. He says, oh, I have this great tracker. You can put it in the car. And I did all that and nothing. The little guy says, the only thing that's on the web is you and him talking about it. He said, usually on the dark web, there's something, because mistresses they'll talk, they're in certain gossip sites and they'll talk among themselves. That's how famously Shaquille O'Neal's ex-wife, Shawnee, always knew, because there were certain web pages she could go to, and the girl, they say the chickens were squawking, the other women would talk about him. And so that to say, after that moment of fear and what I realized too was every time my life was moving upward, launch my store, launch my church, here would come that, oh, something's going on. It's about to implode again. The terror of betrayal and life's gonna suck, And so I did what I do. I said, well, let me look, because asking him, I mean, what would that do if he's lying? That's, or I'd have a nightmare. I'd have a bad dream, and that was happening too, where again, it seemed like each time I'm moving forward or accomplishing things I've always wanted to, have in my personal life, I'd have a dream, I'd have a nightmare, and I go, oh, here we go again, So I was talking with my husband in the kitchen, like I said, it was a couple of years ago, and I just broke down in tears. Now, mind you, within this period, I've had breast cancer surgery, I had mastectomy in 2020, and then I lost my uterus like 2 years after that. So I have no estrogen, no nothing. Right. So I'm already halfway to loony bin. So, and I can't take estrogen because of the breast cancer. So I'm doing the best I can, right? So I broke down in the kitchen and I said, I'm crying. I'm just like, honey, I'm so sorry. I said, I think I still don't trust you. I have trust. There are seasons that there are like these things that just send me. I said, I'm going to go for therapy. And he's like, I'm with you, honey. And he just similar. Now he's reading this book Helping Her Heal, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Help heal.
And I thought, where was this book in 2010? Uh, and he's just so precious. We were in the kitchen just a week or two ago, and he said, honey, I read this thing that says, we should talk facing each other with our knees touching. And I said, okay. So we sat with the kitchen bar stools and we put our knees together. And the minute I looked at him, I went, oh, so we both started crying in the kitchen. And I had this emotional reaction that was really weird. It's like this little thing inside me, like another personality or another part of me, felt like running out of the room.
Mm.
And I was like, what the heck was that? I had this urge to just jump up and pew, run out the kitchen door. But I, of course, didn't. I sat there like, what the hell was that? And I went, there's something like two levels of consciousness. My conscious mind is, okay, let's talk. But deep within, there's someone going, this is not okay with me, and so I went, well, I need to work on me. He's more healed than I am. And so I started seeing someone again, but I'll be going to Texas for this like 3-day intensive with EMDR. So someone who was very like recommended.
I think what you're pointing out, Rebecca, is that I want to appreciate you for honoring yourself. That when there's these seasons in life for you where something you're launching or some big stressors that for whatever reason you're going to find out why does that activate the fear response in you, and that you go check it.
Wow.
I said my intuition says, and so I got to go check it and go check it. And then wonderfully Terry's really solid in recovery, so when you check there's nothing. But I make it so important for you to honor that in your system, to go check. And then go, you know what, maybe there's some work for me to do, and then go do it. I just have so much respect for that. That's just really
Thank you. And really, it's like you have to check till you're done with it, because even when I didn't see anything, I'd go, well, maybe he's just being good the last 2 weeks. Maybe I got to watch him for like a year. And I, my head is going like, and then one day I just go, well, I guess if he's going to do something, I'll find out some way. I can't live my life like Inspector Gadget, or, I Spy or Sherlock Holmes. So it's like something in me just goes, well, I have to live. So I'm putting away the spy cam and all that. And I just go on with my day and my life and just keep living.
that's an important
I want to
point.
say, I mean, I really appreciate that, because partners a lot of times are told, don't go through his computer, don't check his phone, don't. And back in the day, it was labeled pain shopping.
Right.
Right.
Was so, and so, I'm in alliance with Jeannie. It's like, I think partners need to do what they need to do until they get to the point with what you're saying, Rebecca. They say, okay, enough. Like, but I'm saying it's enough, not somebody else
Right.
saying that. My nervous system is saying, okay, you can let go. You don't need to do this until maybe you do in a month or two, or whatever the time frame is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also had what I would call a divorce narrative, because my mother, she's 82. She did not ever remarry after she divorced her second husband. All the women on my mom's side are single by choice. Grandma had 5 husbands, left the planet without one. My mother, like I said, shut the door on love after her second marriage was ending. So I think I had this narrative like, oh, someday we'll probably break up because, well, men cheat and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, after Hollywood came and he's a star, I really thought, oh, well, we're going to definitely probably go that way. I mean, this is terrible. Please forgive me. But, it was like, oh, men are dumb. They'll, they get a big head and they leave you for the secretary, blah, blah, blah. That was the narrative of men, masculinity in our house, in my mother's house.
Yeah.
And the expectation of that failure was always there. You know,
Mhm.
you just did not have the faith that you'd be happy till the day you died in your marriage or with your husband. And I'm assuming that's how she felt because that's what she saw. My grandfather King, who's my paternal grandfather, was a pastor, and he and his wife Harriet were ministers. He was the only man I knew that I respected. You know, I didn't have a lot of male figures that I saw as high and worthy as him. Most of the rest of them, you know, so I think we all have our beliefs that come from our experiences. And so for me, that I'm still married 36 years is like a miracle to me. You know, I'm like, wow, I'm still here and he still likes me and I like him. And, you know, and we're grown-ups and our kids are grown up and we're parents of adult kids and we're traveling and we're still like, he was on the flight to London and I'm across the hall because, you know, you're in those little cubicles sleeping. And I had this moment of, wow, I'm very blessed, you know. And I went across the hall in my little pajamas and I just plopped on his lap and I hugged him and I just started crying and I kissed his cheek. I said, I love you, honey, and thank you for everything. Thank you for succeeding at your dream. Thank you for believing in this family. Thank you for allowing us to come with you on this ride, this adventure you wanted to live. And thank you for trying to be a better person. And I just was hugging him, and the little stewardess came by. She's like, "Oh, are you newlyweds?" I said, "We're oldie weds. We're really old."
Oldie weds.
I said, "But I just had a bubble. I just had a bubble." I said, "I just, you know, felt like gratitude." And yeah, and I'm a little emotional from that because
Yeah.
That's lovely.
But you know, I
yeah.
want to circle back because there's something that you're talking about that I think is really important to highlight, which is, you know, I put it in sort of like that trust piece and sort of like the faith in the relationship piece. And
Mhm.
as addicts, sometimes partners, we tend to get a little all or nothing. It's all
Mhm.
good or it's not good, or we're good
Mhm.
now and it's never going to be bad again. And
Mhm.
what I hear in your story, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is there are moments when I really trust him and I trust that he's doing what's going on. And there are moments when, for whatever reason, I don't and I get afraid. And sometimes that's situational. And sometimes there's something that he's doing I need to talk about, but sometimes it's just my stuff. And then there are
Mhm.
other moments where I trust him. And what I really appreciate for you is like you recognizing, you know, there's something that keeps coming up here that's not him. It's my situation. So let me
Mhm.
go do some EMDR to see if I can find my way through that. But
Mhm.
it highlights this piece that in recovery, in healing from betrayal trauma, it's not a straight path. You know, it's steps forward, it's steps backwards. And when we take a step backward, it's not the end of the line. It's not a bad thing.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
just is.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you about the all or nothing,
Oops.
and him too. So um, yeah, I would definitely sometimes feel very like defeated or guilty if I would have, you know, betrayal trauma like rehashing, or I would go, oh, you know. But I think about it like, well, like you say, like growth in anything has its twists and turns and up and down, and
Yeah.
you know, I'm a pianist, right? And so you learn to play your scales and then you flub and then you have a breakthrough and you can master that Mozart piece and then you're off school in the summer and you don't want to play the piano this summer, you know? So you life is just that way, the ebb and flow. And I've always wanted perfection, you know, I've always had that like a little perfect thing in my head. Um, But yeah, while we walk on this planet, we have trials and tribulations, and we have economic downturn. We have children who are not doing what they should. We have, you know, pick your battle, you know, and those battles, whatever they are, um, can set you up to feel vulnerable. And I think of my spouse that way. You know, he could have an attack of some kind. He could go through something that would make him vulnerable to relapse. And thankfully, he has given himself, and I don't say this lightly, he said one of the reasons he went public was to burn all his bridges.
Yeah.
He said, I want to share it and talk about it because the world has the right to hold me accountable for it. And that was his heart, to just say, I never want to be that person again. I never want to do that again. And I went, wow, and I say this with all my heart. He's never going to convince me that he would never go back, because people do. But should that be the case, that would be a separate issue, because I feel like life has challenges, and hopefully we grow to the point that we handle challenges better as we age. But then there are other mitigating circumstances. I think about my hormones right now. My hormones have made me vulnerable to outbursts of wrath that I didn't have in my 20s, and I think, well, gee, I felt like I'm becoming a better person. And now, because I don't have estrogen, I'm like the wicked witch. And everyone's going, Mom, you're kind of harsh. I'm like, sorry, I'm not trying to be, So I don't have faith in a human, because humans have fragility. They have frailty. They have weakness. They have sinfulness. But I do believe that God gives us something to help us grow, to help us heal. And that, I believe, is his presence and his spirit in our life. And that is a big part of why I think the 12th step and the higher power enables there to be what is called transformation, where you really are new, but you're new inwardly. You're new in spaces that you didn't know you needed to be new. And then, like we say, then the fruit just falls off.
Yeah.
I remember the day, because my father died when I was 6 in a car accident. So, early on, fear of abandonment, right? So I started sucking my thumb. I remember the day that I was sitting in our house in Indiana, and I turned to my mother. I said, Mom, I haven't sucked my thumb in like forever. She said, I know, I noticed. I was 11 years old, still sucking my thumb. But something happened to me. I had gained confidence. I started playing sports, and I had some good friends, and my little habit just fell off.
Yeah.
And I went, it was like I didn't try to stop sucking my thumb. It just went away.
You were healed.
Yeah.
With
And that's kind of what I feel like we've experienced. Like,
Thank you.
we really just went so without activating whatever that was. And we're like, we're different. We're both different.
I want to
And
thank you for sharing that, Rebecca, because when you're saying we're different, right, you are absolutely speaking to that later phase of healing and the transformation that you've gone through yourself and the healing work that you've done, and also Terry.
Mhm.
And so,
And still healing, really. I wish I had done well. Maybe I wasn't ready, because now I see why the counselors were saying, go deal with your stuff if you're going to save the marriage, because I realize I have a lot of voices that talk to me that, it's old voices, like a teacher, a parent, a friend, a sibling. And and you mix that up, and you're like, is God mad at me? Because why is there a voice in my head all the time putting me down? Why is there, and I said, I actually went to God. So why do I have this, always negative condemnation? He's like, that's your mom, Rebecca. He's like, she was hard on you. She didn't mean to be, but she was. And I said, oh. So now I go, oh, I see why they tell the spouse, go deal with your stuff too. So you can kind of grow together and heal together, and you're not kind of like this in your healing. And I think we were. He went very hard and fast towards recovery, I was kind of standing on the porch going, I want to see what you're going to do first, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a little behind him, but I hung in there because I just felt like,
You did what you needed to
yeah,
do, pace and
yeah,
the way that you needed to
yeah,
do it.
Also, just there's two layers of wounds. I mean, there's the betrayal trauma that you had to heal from, and that's its own thing. And then,
mm,
as you're saying, there's layers to all this, and it seems like
mhm,
now's the time where
Yeah.
it's time for you to look at some of the other things for yourself. So
yeah.
I think we're all
I'm like,
ready when we're ready.
Thank you.
yes, I know I say that like, why am I just now, you know, going in this space? But I'm a good little worker, you know, I'm a little workaholic. So whatever was wrong with me, let me put my mind on something else kind of thing. And so, yeah, now I have to go under the knife. So,
Well, I'm hopeful that the other therapists will be very kind and supportive of you as you do your work.
mm,
I just want to start wrapping us up that we are so thankful that you have shared so vulnerably with us and your experience of going through those early days and just to remind folks like you're talking about a time, the early part of our conversation, 15 years ago and all the work that you've been doing and still do. And again, using those words of transformation and change and humility, um, just really impressive. So thank you so much for being here and sharing yourself with us. Truly appreciate it.
well,
Yeah.
thank you for having me. It's a joy for me to hopefully help other people with what I've gone through. That's a very big part of who I am as a person, as a minister, as a child of ministers. We always say, you know, you pass it on. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rebecca. If you are listening and on YouTube or an audio platform, one way that you can help others find conversations on sex addiction and relationships is to comment or like or follow us. And we thank you so much for being here and joining us today with Rebecca Cruz. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.